Junior Eurovision is dying. Here's why. The 22nd annual Junior Eurovision Song Contest took place last Saturday in Madrid, and this might have possibly been the most underwhelming and underhyped edition to date. However, this is not the first time that Junior Eurovision fans were left disappointed, which leaves countries questioning, is it worth competing anymore? I don't think it's crazy to think that Junior Eurovision is on life support. In this video, I'm gonna tell you exactly why. My name is Sean and I am a Eurovision reactor and commentator. I do these videos because I love Eurovision and I want to contribute to its improvement for the artist and for the community of fans. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel as that will help me to keep creating content like this for your intrigue. My content is free and it is honest, so why not subscribe? And if you want to interact with me on all things Eurovision, you can find me on social media as well. Before we begin, disclaimer. Nothing from what you're about to listen to is directed at the young singers who participate. These singers have the opportunity to perform on the Eurovision stage, and rightly so, they are maximizing from this chance. I have nothing against the idea of Junior Eurovision. While I don't follow it as much as the main contest, I do enjoy watching it every year. So this video is directed at the adults who produce this contest and at the heads of delegations who are responsible for each country's participation at Junior Eurovision. Disclaimers out of the way, let's get into this video and let's understand how this competition all started. The origins of jesc date back to 2000 when Danish broadcaster F.Y.R held a contest for young Danish children. The idea was then extended to the Nordics, and a contest called MGP Nordic debuted in April 2002 with Denmark, Norway and Sweden as participants. With the success of MGP Nordic, the EBU developed an idea for a children's contest and created a junior alternative for Eurovision. Given their experience with MGP Nordic, it was decided that Denmark would host the very first Junior Eurovision Song Contest. In November 2002, the EBU released a statement confirming the debut of the show with 15 competing broadcasters. According to the statement, the concept for the Eurovision Song Contest for children proved so popular with the members that the EBU had to hold a draw to decide which countries could take part. The format of the contest was very similar to that of the main Eurovision, but the rules were different. All the children taking part had to be aged between 8 and 15 years old. The songs had to be sung in the country's national language and had to be written by the children themselves, without any professional help. It was also decided that unlike the main contest, the country that would win Junior Eurovision did not necessarily have to host the following edition. This would reduce pressure on the young contestants taking part. In fact, before the inaugural contest took place in 2003, it was already revealed that the United Kingdom would host the following edition, even though in the end they didn't. One particular rule that specifically differed from the main contest was that the performers could not have commercially released music before participating at Junior Eurovision. This rule was dropped in 2007, and it is thought to be one of the main reasons why countries like Norway and Denmark withdrew from the competition ever since. The initial rules made a lot of sense in 2003, and considering the age of the participants, we can understand that these rules were specifically crafted for children. The idea was less about competition and more about providing an exposure for local young talent. The language rule was a natural one, especially when you remember that young children probably do not know how to speak any other languages other than their national language or at most the official languages of the country, especially since the lyrics of the song had to be composed and sung by the performers themselves. The very first Junior Eurovision took place on Saturday, 15th November 2003 in Copenhagen. 16 countries took part. The event was hosted by Danish rapper Ronela and TV host Camilla Ottesen. Interval acts featured performances from British bands The Sugar Babes and Busted, who both performed their singles while viewers cast their votes. Voting took place in a traditional Eurovision format, and a 100% televoting system was used. The contest was won by Dino Jelsic with the song Ti si moja prva ljubav for Croatia. The first edition was regarded as a success, and the contest returned in 2004. It was originally planned to take place in Manchester. However, in May 2004, the UK dropped out of hosting due to financial and scheduling constraints. ESC Today had reported that the British broadcaster's €1.5 million budget was too small. The EBU then approached HRT to host the contest in Croatia. However, the venue in which the contest was supposed to take place was already booked for another event. With 5 months remaining until the contest, Norway stepped in to host the contest in Lillehammer. 18 countries took part, with France and Switzerland joining the original lineup. The 2004 production was very similar to the one of 2003. The all-televoting system was at its peak success in the main contest and was therefore retained at Junior Eurovision. The interval act featured Irish boy band Westlife as the contest was watched by 100 million viewers. The contest was won by Spain's Maria Isabel and her song Ante muerta que Cecilia. This is probably the most commercially successful winner of Junior Eurovision to date. The contest went on for 20 more editions to date. Unlike the main contest, its history is uninterrupted since the contest was not cancelled in 2020 during the coronavirus pandemic. Although with restrictions, the contest took place in Warsaw. Since traveling was difficult during the outbreak, artists were featured remotely and were present in Warsaw via live link. 9 out of 12 performances were pre-recorded in local studios. Delegations from Malta and Serbia were able to travel and film their performances on the main stage, together with hosts Poland. The contest was won by France's Valentina with J'imagine. Junior Eurovision later returned to its live format in 2021 and took place in Paris. So if the contest started out with so much success, how can it be that only 22 years later it is dying? I have narrowed down the answer to 10 reasons as to why the contest's evolution has become more regressive than progressive in the last few years. In 2003, Junior Eurovision songs had to be composed by the performers themselves. This rule was relaxed in 2008, allowing adults to help out with the songwriting process, but the kids still retained the sole rights of the songs. From then on, the songs were still composed by the children at large, but this habit quickly disappeared, and by 2011, the original rule was phased out. In 2011, Georgia won the contest with a song composed by an adult songwriter and written by performers Candy. It is not known whether the performers have the sole rights of the song or not. The Swedish song in the same year, F.Y.R, was written by 3 individuals, one of which is singer F.Y.R. However, a remix of it on Spotify does credit the other 2 songwriters. On the other hand, Moldova's song in the same year, performed by Lyrica, was entirely composed by another adult writer and not by her. This means that although there was no official statement from the EBU at the time, 2011 marks the year where Junior Eurovision singers were no longer required to be involved in the writing of the song. By 2015, only 1 song was fully written by the artists themselves. The majority of the songs were written by the artists and adult composers. Artist involvement kept decreasing, and in 2019, 15 out of 19 songs had no involvement whatsoever from the artists, and no song was written without adult writers. In 2024, 3 songs involved the artists, while 14 were composed by adults with no involvement from the artists. This reality is particularly saddening because it takes away from the reason as to why this contest exists in the first place. If Junior Eurovision has become a showcase for songs written by adults, sometimes for adults, what is the point of it? This also sheds a darkness on the craft of songwriting. The fact that most songs in a contest made for children do not have any involvement from the children themselves is rather hypocritical. Do we even need this contest at all if it is just another showcase of adult writing efforts? The impression this gives that with the rise of royalties paid through streaming platforms, adult writers simply want to make money out of exploiting children. The result is a show that acts as an extension to the main show, the only differences being the number of participants and the age of the singers. Junior Eurovision songs could only be sung in the country's national language, or a country's official language at most. In 2009, this rule was relaxed, and it allowed up to 25% of the song to be sung in a different language. In 2017, this rule was relaxed once more, and it is now allowed to have up to 40% of the song sung in an entirely different language, which usually ends up being English. Back in the 2000s, this rule was there to protect the children, since most kids don't know any other language other than their mother tongue or an official language of the country. Moreover, it also made sure that the songs were genuine, innocent and true vehicles of the child's talents. While the change in 2009 did not really impact how much English we saw, by the mid-2010s, we started seeing a lot more English in the competing entries. While in essence there is nothing wrong with this, it certainly gives the impression that English lyrics are there to make the songs more competitive. However, if these children are singing lyrics in a language that they don't know, the authentic and genuine nature of the songs is therefore severely diminished. Some exceptions to this argument do exist. Although this is rare, some children do know how to speak English fluently when they are young, especially ones in Western Europe, where English is taught in schools at a very young age. Another exception is made-up languages. In the late 2010s, we have seen songs in imaginary languages. Georgia's Bzikebi even won the contest in 2008 with a song resembling B sounds, containing only 8 letters from the alphabet. Although there are some exceptions, it is logical to conclude that language restrictions are there to protect the genuine and authentic nature of Junior Eurovision songs. During the first years of Junior Eurovision, every competing artist had to be chosen by a live televised national final in the country where televoting would select the winner. As the years rolled by, this rule also disappeared, and by 2010, some broadcasters started choosing internally for Junior Eurovision. In 2024, most of the artists were selected internally, with only 7 out of 17 artists being selected through a national final. The lack of the original rule is embarrassing in a children's contest. While internal selections are moderately legitimate in the main contest, this is not the case at Junior Eurovision. Children aged 9 to 14 do not have careers or record labels which might keep them from competing in a national final. At that age, every aspiring Junior Eurovision singer is on the same level. Some singers might have competed in local talent shows at most, but that does not justify them being internally selected to represent their country. Internal selections at a children's contest give way to nepotism and show that the competition is not open to every talent. Ultimately, it is those with connections to the broadcasters that end up being selected. Additionally, this practice also suggests that children whose parents can fund a Junior Eurovision participation will be favored. This is especially prevalent in a time where broadcasters are constantly struggling with the costs of participation associated with any Eurovision event. The absence of the original rule regarding national selections is therefore another reason as to why this contest is losing its integrity. Junior Eurovision is becoming less for the children and more for the adults, and this is a big factor contributing to its slow death. Since 2003, Junior Eurovision singers had to be aged between 8 to 15. However, in 2016, with the influence of the main contest being felt very heavily, host broadcaster TVM, on behalf of Malta, wanted to focus the competition more on the children. For this reason, the age bracket was lowered down to singers aged 9 to 14. This age restriction has helped to keep the contest less adult. With the growing influence of social media and talent shows, the contest was starting to feel very competitive by 2014, to the point that some performances became less age appropriate. Therefore, I would say that this rule serves the contest in its current form, and it is important that it stays that way. The number of countries interested in Junior Eurovision has decreased from the contest's inception. At its peak, the contest saw 18 countries take part in 2004. This number was expected to grow as the contest evolved, yet it did not. This caused concern for the contest's future, as it would not be financially possible for it to continue without funding that is largely coming from participation fees. By 2010, the situation grew serious. Just 1 month before the show, it was reported that the 2010 edition could be the last. This report came after comments made by the former head of delegation in Armenia. Diana Mnatsakanyan commented that the 2010 contest could be the last Junior Eurovision ever, as not many countries wanted to participate anymore. She explained that the idea that children should not be in competition with each other was gaining popularity among broadcasters. These comments came at a time when the EBU did not have any applications to host the 2011 contest, which ended up being hosted by 2010 eventual winners Armenia. At the time, the EBU denied all of this. In 2011, 13 countries participated, and only 12 countries showed up in the contest of 2012 and 2013. The number of countries participating at Junior Eurovision was finally resurrected in 2014. After Malta won the 2013 contest and started preparations to host the contest in 2014, 16 countries were confirmed to take part. At that time, such achievements were attributed to members of the EBU's Junior Eurovision team that had been restructured and worked to revive the contest. The show was a success and is considered to be the turning point of Junior Eurovision. The momentum seemed consistent until 2016, when Malta coincidentally hosted once more. 17 countries participated, and since then, the number of entries kept increasing. In 2018, a record was set where 20 countries participated in Belarus. In recent years, this number varies between 16 and 18 countries annually. Although the number of entries has stabilized along the years, many countries do not show up on a regular basis, and the EBU is reliant on debuting or returning countries to fill in the spots left by withdrawing countries. In fact, fans are usually left baffled by how certain countries who claim no interest in Junior Eurovision mysteriously end up on the list of participants when it is revealed. However, in 2021, a scandal was revealed that seemed to answer these suspicions. The Times of Malta revealed that according to former TVM chief John Bundy, Malta was supposed to fund the expenses of 6 participating countries at the 2016 Junior Eurovision, the last which it hosted. Although it was not revealed which countries had their expenses paid for, this explains how certain countries were persuaded into competing. It seems like since 2014, with Malta being the first host country to use this practice, it is now incumbent on the host broadcaster to finance certain countries' participation at the Junior Eurovision Song Contest. This ensures that the contest can go ahead with the necessary number of participating countries, which results into the necessary funds used to host the contest. Although this was never confirmed by the EBU, it definitely makes sense, and it explains why we keep getting an irregular lineup of countries participating every year. It also gives understanding as to why countries like Estonia and North Macedonia end up participating at Junior Eurovision. These countries already have very small budgets for the main contest, with North Macedonia not even being able to compete as of late. This practice between the host and the EBU provides the ability to beef up the number of participating countries. Additionally, members who would otherwise not be able to afford another EU bill are now able to compete at jesc. But although this keeps Junior Eurovision afloat, one cannot deny that such deals come with a huge lack of transparency as to how the contest is funded. I mean, who knows what else goes on at the EBU offices that goes unreported. The voting system along the years has largely mirrored what went on at the main contest at the time. Until 2007, the contest used televoting to determine the results. In 2008, juries were reinstated for 50% of the final score, just as they were in the main contest from 2009 onwards. In 2016, the voting changed again, and televoting was completely removed. Instead, a children's jury decided 50% of the votes, while the other 50% came from an adult jury. This was the first and only edition where viewers had no say on who wins. Needless to say, this was not at all well received and was not repeated ever again. In 2017, the jury vote went back to its original 3 adult and 2 child composition, while the televote was brought back through an online voting system, where viewers voted for a maximum of 5 and minimum of 3 songs, potentially including their own country. The online votes were proportionally represented and turned into 50% of the score. The online voting has been a regular feature since 2017, and although it has been initially well received, it has grown unpopular due to the fact that the difference of points between the highest and the lowest scoring country is much narrower than that of the jury vote. This gives the jury much more power in deciding the overall result, and thus makes the online vote significantly ineffective. The argument that the voting system at Junior Eurovision needs changing is certainly a valid one. For the same reasons as the main contest, the jury vote is highly questionable and incredibly inconsistent. Nobody knows what the jury rewards anymore because its criteria is vague and selective. This vote does not reward song quality and vocal mastery in a consistent way. In 2024, 12 out of 16 juries gave Georgia the maximum points. Without taking anything away from Georgia's win, given how subjective and personal music is, this result is simply inorganic and unnatural. When you consider that the song was not particularly highly regarded before the contest and only came 6th in the public vote, there is no logical explanation as to why the song completely swept the jury vote and why it collected almost 94% of all possible jury points. Without wanting to create much of a conspiracy here, I do think that through the easily influenced jury vote, the EBU wanted to help Georgia win. And this is because they might have been the only country that was ready to host the 2025 edition. It is no secret that the EBU has conversations with broadcasters about hosting before the final of every Eurovision event. Additionally, the EBU also wants the winner to host the next edition, because essentially this is part of the Eurovision branding. However, as Junior Eurovision grows less relevant, the EBU is finding it harder to convince broadcasters to finance and host an event that is watched by less than 50 million people. This year, my guess is that the only countries willing to host in 2025 were Georgia and Armenia. I could be dead wrong, but I could make a case for every other country as to why they would decline hosting duties. The online voting has been a fruitful experiment at Junior Eurovision, one which was expected to later feature at the main contest but thankfully did not. As years rolled by, we have seen that this feature gives all the power to the jury and makes it difficult for any song that wins the online vote to win the overall contest. Because the representation of points comes from the total number of points that the song obtained, the margins of the points are very small. Additionally, since there is no proportional representation for participating countries and their votes, smaller countries are almost completely unable to influence the result. For this reason, it is only logical that the online voting system is abolished and the traditional SMS or phone call voting is reinstated. This will give back the participating countries a proportional representation in the televote. And if we don't want to lose the engagement from the rest of the world, we can include a rest of the world vote like we have at the main contest. Plus, if producers choose to go back to the traditional televoting system, there is the added bonus that the money collected from the phone voting could be used for charity, just like what used to happen in the late 2010s with charities like UNICEF and World Vision. In its 22-year history, the time slot of jesc has been changed almost every year. Until 2015, the show occupied Saturday evening slots. This varied between 7 p.m. and 8:15 p.m. From 2016 until 2023, the show was moved to a Sunday afternoon slot and usually started as early as 4 p.m. but in some instances as late as 6 p.m. In 2024, the show was brought back to its original Saturday evening slot, and this time it started at 6 p.m. This inconsistency makes it really difficult for casual Eurovision viewers to know when Junior Eurovision is on. Not everyone will make the effort to look up exactly what time Eurovision is on. They will just assume. This year, for example, I know plenty of people who completely missed Junior Eurovision because they did not expect it to be on a Saturday evening and instead expected it to be on Sunday afternoon and was severely underreported, which brings me to my next point. Junior Eurovision has struggled with press coverage since its drop in 2016. The inevitable discomfort of constructively criticizing young singers who are performing to millions of viewers has caught up with the community of journalists to the point that no one wants to talk about Junior Eurovision anymore out of fears of getting cancelled. Before the radical restrictions on press freedom, the competition was legitimized by extensive fan media who interviewed the artists and provided feedback during rehearsals. Nowadays, this privilege is not there, neither for the journalists nor for the artists. Everyone loses in this scenario. Producers claim that there should be no pressure on the young artists. Yet this idea is completely mythical. Just like sports competitions, which some of these artists take part in, Junior Eurovision is an institution where healthy doses of pressure and expectation make the artists work harder. Where there is no pressure, there is no care for success, thus reducing quality as we've seen in the recent years. While I hope at least that the intention here is good, the consequences are long-term. The EBU has established a safeguarding policy which came into effect after the 2022 contest in Yerevan, Armenia, where a lot of singers fell ill during rehearsals. Although I'm sure there are things that happened that we don't know of, what we do know is what we can comment on. And what we do know is that some kids got sick and the safeguarding policy was introduced. It is not anyone's fault that any of these singers got sick, and it is not an anomaly that in a cold city in the middle of December, after the coronavirus pandemic, some people got sick. While a code of conduct is welcome in a competition where adults are producing a children's show, this should not deprive kids from learning that when they work hard, they are rewarded. If any child gets sick at Junior Eurovision again, it won't be the safeguarding policy that makes them feel better, but rather a visit from the doctor, a pause on strenuous activity, and vocal rest until the show. Radical policies like this in a competition for young children only instill fear, silence, and uncertainty for everyone involved. When we deprive children from experiencing natural emotions that are necessary for their mental development, and we replace them with fun, we are robbing them from our responsibility as adults to educate them. All we're doing is giving them the false idea that success can come without sacrifice and disappointment. By silencing the press at Junior Eurovision, the EBU is directly telling us that we are not capable of appropriately addressing children on a Eurovision stage. And I think we can all agree, if nothing, that this blanket ban on press freedom is absurd. Besides, as we've discussed earlier, these songs are written by adults, these delegations are fronted by adults, and the performances are created by adults who mostly feature in the main contest to begin with. Therefore, it is no different than what we judge at the main contest. The criticism then only needs to be adapted, and I agree that it is adapted, only when it is about the singers who are children. The return of the free press is key to stopping the slow death of Junior Eurovision. The latest editions of jesc have felt uniform and stripped out of any creativity in their hosting and production. From the forceful scripts to the exhausted cookie-cutter hosting lineup of one Junior Eurovision star, one former Eurovision star, and a local host, the production feels sterile. The EBU needs to let the host broadcasters host a contest that they are hosting and funding themselves in a way that they deem is creative and successful. Where the EBU should step in is only to protect the traditions of the contest that should feature in every show, which is the opening flag parade, the voting presentation as we know it, and the performance of the previous winner in the interval act. And in the 2024 edition, 2 out of those elements were not present. The voting presentation was changed, more on that later, and the winner of 2023 did not perform their winning song. When this happens, casual Eurovision viewers do not feel like they're watching Eurovision, but rather just another outdated singing competition. If we really want to let this be an event where children express their talents and abilities, we need to let them be the stars of the show with actions, not words, and not silly little policies. As adults, we have the responsibility of shaping the future generation, and our failure to do so in the present will only cement uncertainty in the future. If the example that we're giving these children is that as adults, we cannot even let go of a contest that was created for the children, then what are we expecting from these children? Adults should only assist in what the children cannot do. And this is exactly why Junior Eurovision is dying.
Okay, Sean, so if you think you're over, how would you make sure that the contest does not die?
What a great question! Here is what, in my opinion, needs to happen for the contest to survive and get its mojo back. Number 1, the songs. The rule that requires the songs to be written by the performers themselves needs to be reinstated, or at the very least, adults can only help in the songwriting process. Involvement of the children needs to be mandatory. This will make the contest genuine, authentic, and by and for the children again. The language rule. The rule that songs must be performed in the national language of the country needs to be reinstated once again to protect the authenticity of the songs and make sure artists express themselves in lyrics in the best ways they know how to. National selections. This is quite simple. It is in the interest of the EBU and the producers that every performer at Junior Eurovision is selected through a fair and transparent national final back home. No internal selections should be allowed. This is the only way nepotism is going to be discouraged. Age restrictions, keep them as they are, yes. Yes, don't change them. Keep them as they are. Participating countries. If the first 4 changes that I propose take place, I am positive that interest in Junior Eurovision will increase. In this way, we would probably have the same amount of countries competing, but without the need for the host broadcaster to pay for a number of them. And this means that financial pressure on the host broadcaster will be decreased, and more countries will be happy to host if they won, and then we don't need to rig the jury vote. Speaking of the jury vote, number 6, to protect the integrity of the competition until the jury vote can prove to be fair, transparent, and consistent, it needs to be completely abolished. Oh, and a bonus point, we are never seeing this again, right? Like, we are never seeing this again, okay? The online voting, we tried it, but it's not serving the contest anymore. It's time to pull the plug on this and bring back the traditional televote. The time slot. This will take some compromises, but broadcasters must agree on a permanent time slot that suits everyone. It's just one Saturday in the year, Jesus Christ. Press coverage. Press coverage must return to Junior Eurovision in its traditional form. Yes, we can and probably need to have a code of conduct that addresses the fact that we are talking about children here, but extinguishing criticism will only foster a culture of oversensitivity and censorship, and then no wonder all our kids have anxiety. Press coverage, on the other hand, will only help the EPU as it will increase engagement and help with viewership in the long run. The production. The broadcasters need to have full control over the show that they are producing and funding. The EBU must only make sure that the flag parade, the traditional voting presentation, and the winner of last year performing the song that they won with in the interval act are protected. Everything else should be down to the broadcaster, but those 3 elements should be protected. And this is probably the reverse of what happened. We have let the broadcasters meddle with the untouchables, and we have not let the broadcasters meddle with the things that their creativity would probably contribute to. If you made it to this point in the video, I thank you, I appreciate you, I love you. I don't usually comment about Junior Eurovision, but since this competition is so far away from what it used to be, I just felt the need to make this video. This is my second video from my Here's Why series of commentary, and if you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you can subscribe to my channel. Don't forget, subscribes are free, and my content, and I think only my content, is honest. Promise you will not regret it. And if you want to interact with me on social media, you can find my handles down below. Thank you for watching. Let's get hyped for Eurovision 2025 together. Bye bye.